been a while since I made a death battle related video, hasn't it? I've seen a lot of these types of videos over the years, but never one for Mortal Kombat specifically. It's no secret that MK has had a rough batch of episodes on the show, not counting the early ones of course. For every Goro vs Machamp and Johnny Cage vs Captain Falcon, there's a Black Canary vs Sindel or a... you know what, I'll save my thoughts on that episode for its own separate video. The point being, it really needs 2 or 3 more consistently good episodes to make up for this, and that's the purpose of this 3-part miniseries, to bring attention to what I think would be the most exciting episode for every character. So why not do all of this in one video, you may be asking? Well, I need booze money, so hush. With that being said, let's kick things off with Scorpion vs Darth Maul. Wow, we're really starting controversial already. Yes, I know Scorpion vs Wolf is the inevitable episode we'll get if Hanzo returns, but hear me out. The big issue with Wolf is that, well, it's a slaughter. Even if you lowball Scorpion and don't allow MK1 stuff, he still stomps. Like, I'm sure it could still be a cool 3D fight, but so can Maul. Not to mention, it's more debatable anyways, and I like the dynamic more. You know that one scene in MK11 where Hanzo is trying to mentor his past self? Think that, but elevated. It's pretty simple connections wise, but I don't really have a Maul matchup I like either. I imagine if I ever play Sekiro, that will change, but I'm terrified of ever trying a Soulsborne game. Next up, with something unexpected, Sub-Zero vs Gaara. Truth be told, I think Glacius is Sub's best option, but I don't really think a rematch is necessary. And Sub, as deserving as he is for a good episode, doesn't have a lot of options. So why Gaara? Especially since I'm not a Naruto guy. They're both cold, wise, honorable ninja clan leaders holding the mantle of a well-known Chinese-inspired fighter. Both were taken from their mother at a young age, becoming violent when they were young, even being blamed for someone's death and having to prove their innocence. Eventually, they'd grow to realize the value of companionship and lead their clans into a new era. There's a bunch of other mini connections too, but that's the gist of it. Hell, you could bring said clans in for a mini army fight. They can both mentor each other's dark sides throughout the fight and criticize each other's styles. Not to mention, the clash between ice and sand can visually be really stunning in the sprite team's hands. God, there's just so much to like here. The same as Lord Raiden vs Raiden Shogun. Well-meaning thunder gods who go from calm to paranoid and broken, and have to work to overcome this. I've talked about this in another video, but there's a neat dynamic here, where Raiden has to figure out the true nature of A, teleporting into her dimension where the real fight can begin. I like to think it's a more violent version of Martian Manhunter vs Silver Surfer, where both recognize the sadness within each other before the killing blow is dealt. Banger idea that I think has a good shot of happening. Speaking of good chance of happening, Liu Kang vs Jago. Besides Scorpion vs Wolf and another matchup we'll get to later, this is the most likely next MK matchup, I think. I don't want this as much as I used to, purely due to the dynamic basically being ruined post MK11. But my personal fear is that it will reduce the likelihood of Shao Kahn vs Gargos happening, since the debate could be the exact same. Although I'd argue that Jago doesn't scale to Gargos, but that's for another video. The point is, I still want it, but my fears are purely personal. Next up, we have Johnny Cage vs Joseph Joestar. I'm not a JoJo's fan, but I think this idea is neat. Rich, carefree fighters who stand out as the jokers within their group, who eventually humbled themselves and saved the world from a god. Both would eventually go on to help train the next generation and have their universes restarted. It's simple, but I think it works. Look, Johnny does not need a second episode, but I think this will be fun regardless. Sonya Blade vs Black Orchid is a matchup. Look, Sonya already had her best and they messed it up. Starting out as the first woman on their rosters, they're both agile tech fighters who go into the military after a parental figure didn't return from a covert mission. Their obsessions with certain organizations would lead to one of their comrades getting kidnapped, forcing the ladies to fight in a supernatural fighting tournament, developing a close bond with another fighter who would become family to them. The point being, these two are very similar. I just think there's more interesting fighters to talk about in a versus setting. I can still acknowledge that this is the best for both, however. What I'm not sure about is if Kano vs Billy Butcher is the best for both. Look, Kano has had so many suggestions like Brian Fury, Wolf from Star Fox, and Doomfist from Overwatch, but Billy stands out for just being a fun idea. If you know both of these guys, then you already know they'd not only hate each other, despite being equally as dirty for contrasting reasons, but would also have some amazing banter. The big issue here is Billy in a versus matchup. He's kinda weird, since if you want to give him his laser eyes, you have to composite his Season 3 and 4 self. I'm sure a workaround is still possible, it's just something to think about. Overall, although it's probably better thematically, this one just works for me. Moving on to the bosses, we have Goro vs Idol, the first bosses of this series who lose their title to warrior monks. Both have ties to a sorcerer, and both have multiple of one part of their body. Yeah, this one's not amazing. Goro does not need a run back, and just bring in Gargos if you want a Killer Instinct villain. It could still work on any other versus show, mind you, just not Death Battle. Next up, Shang Tsung vs M. Bison. Yeah, I know, it's mainly just a rivalry fight between the game's second most iconic villains, but I don't know, it just works. Unlike Akuma vs Shao, the combination here actually works in my eyes, given how similar the two are personality-wise, and it's honestly the matchup we should have gone with in Season 8 instead. I think the colour contrast here could make for a visually stunning sprite fight, or even 3D. Having an air fight leading to Shang summoning a tornado would be so cool, as that could bring out Final Bison for the final clash. There's a lot you could do here if you just be creative. For our last MK1 boss, Reptile vs Lizardman, or Sizel vs Aeon, whichever you prefer. Two humanoid fighting game reptiles that fight to restore their lost people, but slowly become more monstrous in the process. A simple yet very effective one in my eyes. It's not like Soul Calibur isn't overdue to return. I think this honestly has potential to be what Boba Fett vs Predator should have been. Two hunters trying to track and, hunt each other, picking up weapons and slowly losing themselves as the fight progresses, with the ending being a straightforward bloodbath. I would advocate for it purely because of how different it could be compared to other matchups from each franchise, and I hope Tora gets its Most Wanted someday. Speaking of Most Wanted, we'll get to that later. For now, we have Kung Lao vs Crane from Kung Fu Panda, another matchup I've spoke about briefly before. It's basically two hat-wielding, arrogant martial artists who grow to humble themselves, being seen as inferior compared to the rest of their colourful allies. A good setter would be Lao believing he should have become the Dragon Warrior, and issuing a challenge to Crane, believing him to be the wielder of the title after seeing him train. It starts off fairly friendly, but after Lao's arrogance says something that triggers Crane, like insulting his mother, who he cares about deeply, this brings the fight to the aggressive stage. An agile land fighter versus an air fighter isn't something we get often, so I think this could be a fun change of pace. Next up, Kitana vs Gamora. Kitana has a range of different options, like Kasumi, Lucina, and, God forbid, Chun-Li. But I prefer Gamora because, well, bias mainly. It's the same as Maul vs Hanzo, where I know there's a more likely matchup, being Kitana vs Kasumi, but I just prefer Gamora because I'm more of a Marvel guy. I think Rocket vs Stitch didn't go into the greater lore of the Guardians as well as I'd hoped, so I'd love to see Gamora in action. You could even involve Thanos and Shao somehow, even if it's just the setup or in dialogue. This would likely be a 3D fight, relying heavily on the environment to convey just how deadly these two assassins are. Literally just make it the spiritual successor to Ryu vs Strider. That's my pitch. What I don't think I need a pitch for at this point is Mileena vs Juri. I know some people prefer X-23 or Azula for Mileena, but Azula's opponent is Tai Lung, and we don't need X-23 on the show before Wolverine vs Bigby. Mileena Juri is sitting pretty as my number 11 most wanted, and for good reason. They're both some of my favourite female fighters from both franchises, purple is my favourite colour, and I just want to see two batshit crazy women go at it. Mileena wins now thanks to MK1, which is kinda sad since MK Twitter always acts like babies when they don't get what they want, and it's really funny. Speaking of funny, Kintaro vs Incineroar is here purely because he had nothing better, and like I said, it's kind of funny. Although it would need to distinguish itself from Goro vs Machamp. Although you could argue a Kintaro W now, but that wouldn't be very satisfying in my opinion. Look, I got nothing exciting to advocate here, it just kind of vibes, you know? Just like Jax vs Guile. Yes, I know it's another, quote, generic MK vs SF matchup, but I've always liked this one. It's quite literally just military mentors to the human female protagonists that will do anything to fight for their families, including martial arts tournaments run by dictators. I got no real pitch here, I just think it's solid. Jax's other options didn't really speak to me. Jax vs Vi could be cool, but Vi has Yang. And Jax vs Barrett is unique, but I've been told it's just metal-armed military men who happen to be black. Riveting stuff, guys. You want something that's really riveting? Well, it's time to gush over Shao Kahn vs Gargos again. Look, I already made a separate video pitching the matchup and why you should like it. In short, they're basically the exact same character, with some similar abilities that can mesh with each other really well. But the thing that really excites me is the idea of this being an army battle. Imagine both of their armies going at it. Shao having Shang Tsung, Sindel, and Reiko go up against Omen, Kamra, and Shadow Jago, with the races of Outworld battling the Omens and the Mimics, which can replicate any KI fighter, along with infinite possibilities. I've actually commissioned Brandon to make this a full track. I really want to push the agenda as to why this is the ultimate fighting game matchup, and I hope you'll join me in making my childhood dream become a reality. I'll leave a link to the pitch video in the description. For another matchup like Liu vs Jago, I'm slowly falling out of love with, Noob vs Reaper. Don't get me wrong, I'd still advocate for this matchup to happen, but not over a certain pairing between these two franchises we'll get into in part 3. Another thing that would bother me is the writing and the analysis, because if Liam's writing it, then you know it'll be cringy as hell with the edgy jokes. That being said, if Ghost Rider vs Spawn is anything to go off of, the dialogue in the fight could genuinely be peak, but the big reason this fight is less exciting to me now is the fact that Noob is the catalyst for low multiversal MK scaling. Not that a debate matters for a good episode, of course, but it does help the waiting period a bit. For something I doubt anyone's heard of before, we have Jade vs Dedu from Fire Emblem Three Houses, right hands of blue royals who they've known since childhood, both losing their kingdoms whilst their friends lost a parent. Years later, they discovered the truth about their homelands, and that their destruction was caused by someone they trusted, and work with a new cast of allies to defeat these villains, now working with their best friend to help build a better future. It may not be the best option for Jade, but I think it's the best she's got. It sounds like it'd be a unique battle too. I'm not a Fire Emblem guy, so please tell me if I've got anything wrong here. For another matchup I don't see talked about much, Baraka vs Killer Croc. Monstrous mutated anti-villains infected with a disease that caused everyone to discard them from society. Both have gone through many hardships, but ultimately find comfort in leading people like them in the hopes of a better tomorrow. Both began as fodder, but have recently developed into their own identities. The point being, behind their exteriors, there really is a hard-working man just doing his best with what they've got, even if it leads to them being the villain of a story or two. Like, hello? This idea slaps. Just do what Saberwolf vs John did, but in 3D. Yeah, and you've got a potential fan-favorite episode with potential for a very metal track too. Rounding out the Mortal Kombat 2 section, we have Smoke vs Raiden from Metal Gear. Whitehead cybernetic ninjas raise the super soldiers, but with the help from others would move away from those who groomed their minds, still facing their inner demons and allying themselves with a group of freedom fighters, rebelling against cyber initiatives to prevent others from losing their own humanity as well. That's just a summary, but these two are the same in a lot of ways. My favourite idea for this would be the toasty guy showing up in Raiden's codec, or Smoke suplexing Jack off a building. You can even have a standing here moment with Raiden trying to punch through Smoke's intangibility. Like, there's so much you can do here, and I think Raiden has enough to justify a proper return. Like, just imagine what a mix between MK and Metal Gear's music would be. Peak. MK free time, starting with Cabal vs Blake from Ruby, former members of large criminal factions who try to atone for their past mistakes by joining the heroes, making iffy decisions along the way. They're both fast and use bladed weapons. With Reboot's Cabal, they both joined defense organizations to try and atone. My favorite part of this matchup is that thematically, both are subtle representations of minority groups, Blake for racial minorities and Cabal for the disabled. Hell, if you want to use evil Cabal, have Blake show him the error of his ways during the fight, either before he dies or she dies. I just think this one's neat. Shout out to homie Gargos for suggesting this one a few years back. For a more obvious one, Nightwolf vs Chief Thunder. It's a classic, the spiritual Native American hunks of rival fighters. It's simple, it works, there's great track and banter potential, it just works, plain and simple. Next up, Hotaru vs Centaur Man. For both centaurs. Yay. Anyways, Sektor vs Forgotu would be my choice for Sektor. I know that Sektor has Sundowner and Robot, and both are solid enough, but I don't know if you can tell, but I like Killer Instinct. Just have the action be cool as hell, all I ask for. Literally just do an Iron Man vs Iron Manga remake and it'll be perfect. Also, what the hell is a Psydude? For Cyrax, we have Gamma from Sonic. Now, Cyrax has a bunch of dope matchups to choose from, like Genji Overwatch, Omega from Sonic, or hell, even Fulgor or Eagle. I've pitched this in the previous video, but as a refresher, both were the creations of technological factions that wish to expand their reign in the world, if not outright take over it. They're both programmed alongside a group of other cyborgs who they consider family and friends, to do battle with a group of freedom fighters. Both eventually get saved by one of the main heroines and sacrifice themselves for the greater good to free one or more of their people, at least if you use Timeline 2 Cyrax. The potential this animation has is so good too. Obviously it would be an explosive showdown, but the emotional symphony you can create here is excellent. The winner, we'll say Cyrax for now, starts off in their evil state, whilst the loser, we'll say Gamma, is on their quest after being set free. Gamma tries to show Cyrax a better way, attempting to convey what Eggman did to him, and eventually gets through to Cyrax, but it's too late. He's already dying. There's so much emotional potential here, which makes this unique to other MK ideas. Please look into this one, it really does deserve more popularity. For Stryker, we have Chris Redfield, former cops turned world-saving heroes thrown into supernatural worlds with just their raw training, embodying obnoxious action hero tropes. Both have partners that get remade with superpowers, as well as both having big punching memes within their communities. Like, it's so simple yet so effective. Resident Evil is long overdue another episode, and Stryker could use the spotlight on a web show like this. It's basically the spiritual successor to Snake vs. Sam, just with slightly more supernatural threats. It's cool, and a Stryker W is based. Shiva was tricky, but I landed on Spiral from Marvel. Multi-armed women who are the henchmen of dictators from worlds with a gladiator-style contest. Despite their loyalty, they resented their master, having a passion for battle and fighting heroes from another world, eventually joining said heroes in the fight against their masters. It's a fine enough matchup, I guess. Shiva doesn't really warrant an episode, but she was fun in MK9, I guess. To complete base MK3, we have Sindel vs Sylvanas from Warcraft. After Black Canary vs Sindel, she needs an actually good episode. Both are high-ranking warriors of fancy societies, but one day both of their homes are attacked by dictators wielding soul magic, witnessing the deaths of everyone around them. Both dictators would intentionally or unintentionally cause their deaths, but would keep their souls hostage. Both would be revived, Sindel losing her freedom while Sylvanas would gain her freedom from Arthas in the process. Both would be reunited with loved ones and restore their homes, becoming their queens. Additionally, both are also similar in aesthetics and powers, as well as having controversial retcons that fans weren't too happy with. I think this is really cool, kinda like an anti-hero version of Sauron vs the Lich King. It doesn't need to happen, but man is it cool as hell. UMK3 time, starting with Chameleon versus the Chameleon from Kung Fu Panda. They are both chameleons. Yeah, I got nothing for him, sorry. It could be cool, I guess. The same with Chameleon vs Nico from League of Legends. Both are shape-shifting humanoid reptile warriors that have their homeworlds destroyed, wishing to restore them. It's basic, and it's fine. I got nothing here. Shapeshifting fights always have a lot of potential, and this is no different. Being able to turn into anyone on their rosters. I'm not a League guy, so I've got no pitch here. So maybe somebody in the comments could give me something. Next up, Ermac vs Necros from Warframe. Both are undead warriors loyal to the leaders of grand armies. Both look like ninjas without actually being one themselves. Both also have complete manipulation over souls. Look, Ermac didn't really have much to work with. Street Fighter's Rose would be another MK vs SF match, and General Kai, while cool, I'd prefer him to fight Death. That's not to say Ermac vs Necros wouldn't be interesting. Both have a lot of similar abilities and unique ones of their own to bounce off each other. Not a Warframe guy, so I got nothing here, but it sounds cool. Lastly, one of my top 25, Rain vs Zuko. Princes born to kingdoms of wealth and prosperity. Both grew up with major daddy issues, wanting their sons dead. They both were loved and adored their mothers. Both would work for the main antagonist before going on their own quest to find their mothers and take the throne for themselves. For contrasting reasons, of course. Both also have sibling issues. They both use bladed weapons, lightning, and contrasting elements. If you use MK1 Rain, there's the added connection of both wishing to redeem themselves too. I know Zuko vs Kuai Liang is getting popular, but I don't know, this one just feels right and features a character we haven't seen on the show before. I think the contrast and similarities between the two, regardless of which Rain personality you go with, allows for some emotion and a lot of bloodshed. Maybe you have Shao send Rain out with an army to conquer Zuko's Fire Nation. There's a lot you can do here. And after Zuko vs Shoto, I think Zuko could use an actually good episode. Kicking things off, we have my personal favourite 3D era character, Reiko, going up against General Ram from Gears. Two generals to massive armies from ultra-violent franchises. Both wield bladed weapons and are feared for their immense power, at least comic book Reiko is. Both are also loyal to their leaders, often to an extreme fault. It's also technically an MK vs KI fight. Look, Reiko's my boy, and I know he doesn't have much, but I think this could be cool, especially since Gears, to my knowledge, doesn't do too well in terms of stats, so it's possibly debatable unless we grant Reiko Chronica scaling. This would obviously just be a bloodbath, with their armies fighting in the background. Besides a gory kill and a metal track, The thing I'd want the most is Reiko having a moment where, after seeing Rom's loyalty to the Queen, he contemplates if him being blind to Shao is really the best course of action for his life. Whilst I'm here, would y'all be interested in seeing a video on how Reiko has, in my opinion, the most potential writing-wise within the new MK timeline? Just curious. Next up we have Meat versus Meat from Skate 3. They are both unlockable meats. I don't know, bro, I just think this would be funny seeing MK Meat throw his limbs around while Skate Meat does tricks around him. It make funny. For Fujin, we have Buddha from Record of Ragnarok. Both are easygoing gods compared to their peers, based around mythological figures with the same name. They both have resentment towards their fellow gods for not helping the mortals more. At one point, both even went to go live among the mortals. There's also the obvious similarities between both franchises. With Fujin's wind powers and Buddha's clairvoyance, this could be a visually stunning fight, ideally in sprites. I don't trust Devil Artemis with cinematic based fights anymore, sorry. Next up, Quan Chi vs Gul'dan from Warcraft. Evil sorcerers and necromancers with similar powers, who lead evil factions. Their ambitions started after meeting an ancient demonic lord that had previously opposed the gods. Both characters would serve them loyalty, expecting to gain more power. Despite this loyalty, they would also contemplate betraying their masters at points. Both of their goals involve resurrecting their masters to conquer other worlds, resurrecting fan favorite characters in the process. Holy shit, this kinda slaps. I've seen Lord Shen and Valam as options for Quan Chi, but this just works so well. I think the animation potential speaks for itself. Two sorcerers with armies of fan favorite characters going at it, performing spells in an attempt to counter the other and steal their souls. It's genuinely peak, not much else to say. Okay, let's get Jarek out of the way, up against Saddam from Street Fighter. Criminals are part of crime factions that eventually take over after their leader's death. The contrast being people want Saddam to return, whereas nobody likes Jarek. Next, oh god, Kai vs Dawson. They're both South Asian, have tattoos, and wield fire. This matchup fucking sucks. Kai has nothing else because nobody cares about him. Please, let's just go with something good next. Tanya vs Demona from Gargoyles wasn't my original pick, but shout out to Vargos for suggesting this one. Treacherous, manipulative women that are members of near immortal species. They both have strong feelings of self-righteousness against what they deem as oppressors. They also have complicated love lives. Look, Tanya was difficult to find one for. She isn't really popular outside the MK community, and MK1 definitely hasn't helped given how boring she is lore-wise there. But I think as simple as this is, it kind of works, and bringing back Gargos would definitely be something some people want to see. Tanya's mobility against someone who can fly could be interesting. To clean up MK4, we have Shinnok vs Emperor Mateos from Final Fantasy II. Both are the main antagonists of what most people consider to be the worst entry in both franchises. They're manipulative evil sorcerers with hellish ambitions and a lust for power to threaten both Earth and Heaven. Both, after being sent to Hell, slew their rulers and built up a demonic army, both with a penchant for cheating death. Both have lighter halves, being Cetron and the Light Emperor, who turn out to be no better than their demonic counterparts. They both can also take up a monstrous transformation during their final boss fight. They even corrupt, or at least get someone else to, corrupt one of the main champions of light in order to fight against the other heroes. They are both very similar personality-wise too, seeing everyone else as beneath them, and often send underlings to do their bidding, believing it is an honor to be slew by them. I kinda dig this. Don't get me wrong, Salem from Ruby is probably better thematically, but it's a Ruby character against a top tier MK fighter, and let's be honest, that isn't fair. I played through the first two Final Fantasy games last year. I liked 1 a lot, but 2 has a weird level up system, but an okay story. Emperor is a decent villain, same with Shinnok. This one's hard carried on vibes alone, but it definitely works. For one I've actually taken quite a liking to, Frost vs Kylo Ren. Failed violent students of legendary warriors who gave into their ambitions and violent tendencies after being promised a better future for them to lead by a cunning manipulator. They'd eventually lead a crusade that eliminated all other students from their former factions. And if we count Frost MK11 ending as canon, they'd both eliminate their new teachers in the end. I think this really vibes, especially if you bring in their armies to clash in the background. I imagine the style would be similar to Vader vs Obito, but this time both would have to give into their anger fully by the end. If Kylo Ren vs Edelgard didn't exist, this would probably be the most popular for Ben. Oh well. Next up, Kenshi vs Kahn and Jarus, swordsmen who would go blind after trusting a manipulative villain. Both also draw their power from a spiritual force, literally in Kanan's case, becoming mentor figures and fighting in large-scale conflicts. It's simple, but I think most agree it just kinda works, and this is the ideal Rebels fight in my opinion. Have it be 3D in a moonlit forest, and I don't think you can go wrong here. Next up, Lee Mei vs MCU Okoye. Both are modern adaptations of pre-existing characters. Both used to be leaders of elite female bodyguards to the royal family, but after failing to save a royal from danger, they'd be stripped from their title and treated as a pariah, yet still remain loyal. Filled with self-doubt, both would still seek redemption and help defeat a tyrant trying to take over their kingdoms, losing their queens and gaining their redemption and finding a new purpose in life. This one's really solid. Before I found Demona, Okoye was my choice for Tanya, but I don't like MK1 Tanya lore-wise, nor does anyone from what I've covered, but in my opinion, this works a lot better thematically. I don't have much to say here. Lee Mei is fun as hell in MK1, and I'm glad she's became a fan favourite. Next up, Draman vs Pinhead. Mortals who, once they descended to hell, became the head torturers. I mean, yeah, it's kinda okay, but putting Draman against someone as iconic as Pinhead feels really wrong, but I have nothing else for him. Moving on to more slop, we have Suhao vs Spopovich. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. Brutish minions who tortured the child of a fan favorite character. They are also hated by both franchises. I don't know, man, I really don't care enough to come up with something for Suhao, and I wish people like Fourth Snake would stop trying to give this guy anything. From one red dragon to another, we have Mavado vs Ilya from Ruby. Did I say that? Members of criminal factions that ally themselves with a dangerous female fighter. Both would go on a mission to seek out a former member that betrayed them, but instead end up injuring an ally of the one they were tracking down, Cabal Wukong. Both also weaponize grappling hooks and a form of sword. I don't mind this, it's not like Mavado had much better. He's my favourite cameo to use in MK1, so I'm glad he has something to work with. Then there's Mokap vs Rob from Nintendo. I don't know, they're both secret fighters based on real life stuff. I'm done, guys, I can't lie. Next up, Moloch vs Miley Cyrus. They are both hot and use wrecking balls. I cannot be bothered anymore. Back to solid ideas. Arrow vs Rai Cho. Teaches the main pyrokinetic protagonists to act as uncle figures. Both are skilled martial artists who weaponize fire, and both are often the humorous ones among their cast. Additionally, they are both obsessed with a certain drink, being tea and booze. I don't prefer this to Uwe vs Arrow, but it's still good. The banter potential is obviously very good, and a scene where they both weaponize their respective drinks would be kinda sick. You can't go wrong with this one. I just don't want it over Uguay vs Arrow. To round out Deadly Alliance, we have Natara vs Eliza from Tekken. Underrated fighting game vampresses. Yeah, that's all I got, sorry. They're cool characters, I like them, yay. For Deception, we're starting with Havik vs Guilty Gear's Raven. Seemingly immortal fighting game villains with impairments on their faces. Both are sadistic characters, taking pleasure in dealing and receiving damage. Both seek nothing more than chaos. Havik to eliminate order, and Raven just to feel something. He's just like me for real. Unlike other Havik matchups, Raven also shares Havik's ability to use his limbs as a weapon, which I think could allow the crew to get really creative. Definitely my favourite for Havik. Moving from Chaos to Order, we have Hotaru vs Nikolai from Anarchy Reigns. They both punish any crime no matter the size in order to maintain order. I don't know, Hotaru had nothing else I could find, mainly because he's a 3D error who's not returned yet. Oh well. Then for Cobra, we have Ken. Yeah, I wasn't gonna bother looking for someone better, it's fucking Cobra, what do you want from me? Then for Kira, we have Poison. Psychotic members of criminal organizations who help reform them after their defeat. Also, MK vs Street Fighter or something. Look, Kira doesn't even have a high quality PNG. Just leave me alone. Then there's Dairo vs Amaranth. Yeah, from Final Fantasy IX. Assassins notorious for being very bad characters within their communities. I haven't played FF9 yet, so I don't know if this is true. If Dairo dies, that would be neat. Just please be something good next. Oh, for fuck's sake. Darius vs Rolento. They are underground resistance leaders from rival games. It's Darius, who the fuck cares? Next. Taking a detour to Tournament Edition, we have Serena vs Ashi from Samurai Jack. Warriors groomed by a powerful religious figure to serve an evil god. They were tasked with their sisters to kill a protagonist, but their sisters would die, leaving just them to be spared by this warrior. Both have demonic thorns and can use demonic powers to assist others. Honestly, it kind of vibes. I've never watched Samurai Jack, but I've seen this thrown around before, so I'm sure it can be good. Serena love is always cool. For Deception's protagonist, we have Shujinko vs Soul Calibur's Edge Master. Old, wise fighters who go on journeys to protect the world from supernatural threats. Both know multiple fighting styles and can manipulate magic. I feel like he can do better for Shujinko, but this is the best I got. Wait, what was his name again? Next, Ashrah vs Vagi from Hazbin Hotel. A demon and an angel who both get banished from the demonic factions after gaining a conscience, joining the faction they originally fought. Ashrah trying to redeem herself and Vagi trying to redeem others. It's a neat contrast matchup that I think has a bit of potential. Ashrah is easily one of the better Mortal Kombat characters, so I hope she gains more popularity in Versus circles, because I feel like there's something better for her. but this one's still kinda cool. To conclude Deception, we have Onaga vs Sukuna, tyrannical kings from bygone eras, both sought to become immortal via sealing their essence away, but who would eventually return after their demises, possessing a popular character and seeking to rule everything again. Both would lose their new bodies, but still find a way back somehow. Both would manipulate the protagonist and mock them relentlessly, using them to regain power by collecting a set of lost items. Fan favourites have sacrificed themselves just to attempt stopping them, and their ultimate defeat would only happen thanks to basically every character coming together. It's kinda sick. Onaga has a popular matchup that I refuse to even acknowledge, and Sukuna has every opponent under the sun. I think this one's perfect given the violent nature of both. Give it a look into. For the Sons of Argus, we have Taven vs Tusk, godlike beings who would survive until present day with no memory of the centuries prior. Both were tasked to watch over or defeat a godlike being by their world's gods, and both wield a sword as their main weapons. It's whatever, but until NRS makes people care about Taven, I doubt people would clamour for a better option. I'm honestly just done with this video at this point, so you can deal with the blurry thumbnail. For Dagon, I have Deimos from God of War, divine fighters with markings over their eye. Both were sealed away by their family of gods, and have an immense hatred towards their brother, who is also a god, who they sought out to kill. I guess it vibes? Dagon always has been interesting to me, and I could see them taking God of War inspiration if they ever brought him back. To end this video, we have Blaze vs Verse from King of Fighters, divine entities made of stone and fire who act in service of other gods, both being targeted by Earth's defenders as they have the power to cause global annihilation. It's basic, but it's Blaze. He's a basic character who's likely never seeing the limelight again, only being relevant in power scaling debates. As cool as I personally find his design, given the nature of Blaze's powers seemingly being able to cause universal destruction and creation, there's a shocking amount you can do with the character. But no, NRS instead will stick to the most limiting options, as per usual. A pity. Oh god damn it. Cyber Sub-Zero vs Mecha Zangief, secret fighters from fighting games that are cyberized versions of iconic heroes. I mean, yeah, it exists. It's Cyber Sub-Zero. I don't think anyone's gonna care. It'd be interesting to have a Marvel vs Capcom original on the show, but at that point, just do Ultron Sigma vs Dark Khan. Next, Skarlet vs Mira, bloodthirsty evil female fighters from fighting games that can weaponize blood magic, with just one goal in mind, to serve their masters. It's simple, but the intriguing part is that both were introduced in their franchise's reboots specifically because they were rumors back in the arcade days that they were unlockable fighters. So there's a decent amount of legacy behind it too. I know you could do Mira vs Natara, but Natara isn't cool enough to go against Mira, let's be real. Skarlet offers a lot more choreography potential anyways. This fight dynamic just vibes, you know? Have it take place in a dark, creepy castle with a classical organ backing the track. I promise we are done with MK vs KA matchups. Moving on to MKX, we have Cassie Cage vs Spider-Girl, two teenage daughters of famous fighters that inherit their mystical powers, inheriting their quippy natures, yet they have a serious side to them. They both have a potential destiny to fight their universe's version of Satan, Shinnok and Mephisto. They also met a past version of their father, and both were eventually erased from the timeline in a reboot. Look, it doesn't sound amazing, but it's the best I could find. I know Cassie as Damien, but that has never really vibed for me. I know next to nothing about Spider-Girl, so I'd be interested in learning. Cassie probably wins even if you don't scale her to the gods of her world, which I don't know how to feel about. Let me know what you think. For Jackie, we have Vanessa Lewis from Virtua Fighter. They are military women who use kickboxing. Yay. Look, Jackie's a lame character. Literally everyone knows that. I couldn't find anything that wasn't spite for her, which is a shame, but I highly doubt anyone cares. Next we have Kung Jin vs Takumi, video game archers with similar hotheads and inferiority complexes towards their own family, who lash out at others to cope. Yeah, look, I got nothing for Jin. He's not a very popular character and doesn't have much to work with besides, well, he's an archer and he's gay. It doesn't leave much room for creativity. Maybe if the cancelled Kombat Black 3 came to reality in MK1, then we'd get something different. For Takeda, we have Nightwing, two warriors who had relatively normal lives until one of, or both their parents were murdered by criminals. Both would then be taken in by a vengeful warrior who also happens to be the face of the franchise, and trained in martial arts and control their dark sides. Both would eventually move away from their mentors and founded a young team of warriors dedicated to Earth's protection. In terms of personality, they are the level-headed ones in their group, often dealing with conflicts, and would end up romancing one of the teammates. They're also sort of ninjas, but not really. Look, I think this is the best you can get for Takeda, especially since his MK1 version is very different lore-wise, and honestly, I'd be down for it. Nightwing I don't think needs a second episode, but it would serve as bait to get my friend Leaf to watch, so that'd be worth it. Takeda's cool, Nightwing is iconic, and the connections are solid. I'd be happy to see this one get more popular. Just like with Kotal Kahn vs Ogre, fighting game characters based on mythological Aztec gods, with similar usage of Aztec weapons and clothing, as well as making a home in South America for a while. Both are from powerful races, with the big contrast being Kotal is a false god whilst Ogre is very real. It's simple, but at this point it's a classic. Kotal is my boy and I will always stand by him being underrated. And Ogre seems like a solid character from what I played in Tekken Tag 2. I spoke about this matchup previously and my stance hasn't changed. The only issue is the debate, since Kotal really doesn't have clear scaling to Shao or the Titans. Regardless, I'm glad this is still decently popular. For Devourer, we have QB from Darkstalkers, yellow-clad, insect-themed characters that can summon swarms during combat. Both serve as the leaders of bug-like races, only wishing to survive in a world filled with monsters ruled by an evil villain. Both even served this villain once, but ultimately will always choose their race first. It's solid. And shockingly, we haven't discussed Darkstalkers yet. Having swarms of insects battle each other in creative ways is definitely unique for the show. As for the big question of if Devourer dies or not, it depends on if you allow Titan Havik scaling, of course. But if not, it's very close, I think. I'd genuinely be down for this. An Outworld character versus a Darkstalker feels like an obvious match made in heaven. Speaking of heaven, Aaron Black versus Cole Cassidy. If you are all familiar with popular requests, then this one should come as no surprise. Video game cowboys from franchises with colorful casts, who were both once mercenaries for crime factions but have since joined forces with their world's, quote, peacekeepers, with the contrast of one being for noble reasons and the other for money. Man, this one's so simple yet so cool. We've yet to have a cowboy fight, and this one's too popular not to be the first one. Imagine them fighting on top of a train or in a bank with a techno western theme playing. You can get really creative with the set pieces here, plus assuming we don't use Titan scaling, yet this one's really debatable. Although I'd probably give it to Cole now that Overwatch scaling is more clear cut. I don't really have a preference either way. I have a massive bias towards this one. It's been in my top 10 most wanted since 2016. Yeah, it sucks, I know. Mortal Kombat and Overwatch, although I have fell out of both franchises recently, they've both been my top 10 favorite fictional franchises based on their characters alone. Both have impacted my life so much, so seeing a matchup this popular involving both franchises makes me really happy. The crew don't seem to care for this from what I've gathered, which is really sad. Hopefully we can push the agenda more. Then for Ferritor, we have Kangaskhan from Pokemon. Fighter duos with one large and one small fighter. Both the little ones spend most of their lives with their larger partner until they die or come of age. It's simple, but Mortal Kombat vs Pokemon is such a funny combo, and this one's the most entertaining idea yet. Having Ferret chat shit towards the confused baby could be very funny. I have no idea about the debate or what the track could be like, I just know this one's unnecessary, yet really fun idea. For Triborg, we have Kamen Rider, yeah, whatever that says. 4-in-1 fusion characters where most of the fighters were unwilling to fuse. Their consciousness were eventually shut down. They now have a new goal to exterminate humanity, weaponizing all 4 fighters' arsenals. Honestly, this is the best we can get for Triborg. Kamen Rider vs Mortal Kombat Ninjas just kind of vibes. It's a franchise overdue for the show, and this one definitely sounds neat. Especially since analyzing 4 characters at once sounds really engaging. Plus, it allows for quadruple the animation potential. Overall, it just sounds neat. And as someone who played Triborg and MKX, I'm glad he has something. Finishing up MKX, we have Tremor vs Atlas. Yes, I know he's from the 3D era technically, but also shut up. Rock-based fighters who can weaponize the earth itself for offense or defense. They are considered a ninja within their franchise despite not really meeting the criteria, and both are a form of mercenary / assassin. I don't know, it sounds fine. Tremor has like no lore to work with, and likely never will, so you get what you get. Weird that we've had 2 Warframe matchups. It's not a bad pairing. Starting off MK11, we have Collector, who I honestly forgot existed until making this video, and hopefully he never returns, so I don't have to remember him ever again. Anyways, I've gone with Big Jack Horner for him. Villains who kinda just do their own thing in the name of profit and greed, who also possess a comical amount of magic weapons. Horner because of all the fun references, and Collector because the staff clearly did not know what they were doing when they made him. Like, generally, Why wasn't Reiko put in MK11 instead? So long as Jack wins, I'm sold, because Last Wish representation is based and Collector's existence annoys me. You don't need to make new characters if old ones haven't returned for a while. For my boy Garrus, we have Zazalamel from Soul Calibur. Powerful immortals who possess time manipulation. When they die, they get revived thanks to a powerful artifact, but they both eventually become suicidal because of this. Eventually, both will come to find new purpose. Zazalamel in seeking his glorious future, and Garrus guarding the multiverse. Honestly, it's always been on my radar, and for good reason. I think the interactions and wisdom here can be clever, and figuring out whose immortality can run out first could be engaging. Here's hoping it happens someday. For Setron, we have Mephiles the Dark, ancient godlike beings who work alongside another being directly tied to them in order to carry out a plan to destroy and recreate the universe. Both would eventually fuse with this other being to carry out the plan, but would be defeated by the very heroes they tried to manipulate previously. Mephiles is a being of darkness, while Setron is a being of light. This is fine, it's not great, but Setron wasn't given much to work with to begin with. I feel like there's some neat interaction potential too with the contrast between them, as Mephiles is fully evil, whilst Setron just wants to please her mother and can be redeemed. Maybe near the end of the fight, Setron can realize how wrong destroying the universe is and give into a more virtuous side. I think Mephiles has better, but I still vibe with this. Then for everyone's favourite MK villain, Kronika vs Ultimecia from FF8. Both are manipulative villains who influence events across time itself, with both of their goals being to rewrite the entire timeline in resemblance of their image. Both have a loyal servant who ultimately will end up empowering them. Both can control time itself, and were defeated by the main protagonist in the end. I think this works. Not played FF8 yet, but this seems neat. Best you're getting for this character anyways, and time manipulation is always fun. MK1's three newcomers are kind of nothing lore-wise, so none of these are very good. Starting with Janet Cage versus Female Terry. I don't know, the female versions of iconic fighters. Janet sucks, bro. For Floyd, we have Galactonite, secret pink copy-based fighters. I don't know, kinda neat. I haven't played MK1 since Chaos Reign, so I haven't unlocked Floyd yet. Maybe if they release an interesting MK character as DLC, I will. Lastly, Madame Bo vs Grandma Sid. Old comic relief characters who can kick ass when needed, who also have a complicated relationship with their family. It funny. And there we have it. I hope throughout these 3 videos you at least got sold on one of the matchups here, as some of them are neat, but I'm aware over half of them aren't great, and that's fine. Not every MK character needs to have a matchup. Hell, only about 5 of these have an actual chance of happening. I just hope one of them is Shao Kahn Gargos, please. With all being said and done, stay safe, and as always, be excellent to each other.